Adam Bamba Tanaka, okay? You are the COO of Therme, which is a global company that is revolutionizing the ancient practice of thermal bathing. But before we get into Therme, tell us a little bit about you. I know that you have a PhD in urban planning from Harvard, but tell us more about you.
Well, it's so fun to be here. I mean, really, the story of my adult life and really much of my adolescence has just been a love of cities and a love of what makes cities tick and what makes cities fun and exciting and inclusive. And that's what led me in my early 20s, basically straight out of, university to go into a PhD, really studying innovation in cities and large scale urban revitalization. And I've always been interested in what are the kinds of uses that can bring people together in large numbers, but also serve as a vehicle for revitalizing urban areas. And, from pretty early in my PhD, I realized I was actually more interested in building cities and being involved in planning cities than just writing about them and reading about them. I still love reading about them, and I actually sometimes still write about them, but really my focus has shifted pretty emphatically towards, designing, dreaming, and building projects in cities. So when I completed my PhD in 2018, I went to work for a real estate and planning consulting company called HRNA that did a lot of work with city governments and developers and community groups and different kinds of institutions in cities. And I absolutely adored that work. Some of the projects that HRNA has been involved with include the High Line and Brooklyn Bridge Park, as well as other projects around the country and even internationally. And funnily enough, in the depths of the pandemic, we were hired by Therme Group to help them think about their US market entry. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about Therme Group as we continue in the conversation. But that was really the first exposure to wellness and thermal bathing and this concept of, large scale, accessible and inclusive wellness. And for me, it was actually a very funny coincidence because my father's family is Japanese. I actually lived in Japan in my 20s. And I grew up in the UK, but have a lot of family in Europe, in France, and in Switzerland. So I had been actually to a lot of thermal bathing and hot springs, establishments. I wouldn't say growing up necessarily, but definitely in my 20s. When I lived in Japan, I visited onsen and sento and different bathhouses. For many years, my favorite film has been a film called Spirited Away, which is this amazing Japanese animated film all set in a bathhouse. So when I figured out, oh my goodness, there's this way to kind of connect this family heritage and love of global wellness culture with my longstanding passion for cities and architecture and development, it just seemed like one of these matches made in heaven. And so when Therme made an offer to join them and help them, launch this concept in the US, it was hard to say no.
But it's not just a bathing facility. I mean, I've seen pictures of concepts and also execution. And essentially, what you do is you drop this little utopia into an urban landscape. And it's not just about bathing. I mean, you're growing food, and it's an entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. I mean, really, the vision is about bringing blue and green spaces into the heart of cities and urban areas. We call them wellness oases, wellness wonderlands, wellness infrastructure. A word that we definitely do not use is a spa or a water park because we're much more than that.
Yeah.
When you walk into our facilities, really the experience is akin to being in a botanical garden. And as you may know, there's a lot of research about the therapeutic effects of being surrounded by greenery, as well as actually the therapeutic effects of looking at lakes and oceans and bodies of water. So a large part of the wellness experience is not the kind of active activity of getting into a pool or getting into a sauna, but the passive activity of being surrounded in a light-filled biophilic space and being able to do so without having to get on a plane or travel to some distant destination, but be able to actually do so, in your own urban area, maybe only a 30-minute drive or even a walk from where you live. And the vast majority of our customers at our European facilities are local residents. Anywhere from 60 to 90% of the customers are local residents. And most of those residents are coming on a repeat basis. So this is not a kind of once in a lifetime, destination experience, but really something more habitual. And in that respect, we're really drawing on, centuries, if not millennia of human traditions of participating in these communal wellness activities, whether it's, the ancient Roman baths in ancient Roman, not just Rome, but across the Roman Empire, or whether it's the hammams in the Middle East and North Africa, or the onsen, in Japan. There is this long heritage of really intentionally integrating large-scale wellness facilities into the heart of an urban area, pricing them accessibly or even making them free in some cases. And that's the tradition that we're really trying to bring back, but I would say reimagined with a focus on nature, so that when you're in the building, you don't even really feel like you're in a building.
So you were the one that coined the phrase for me, and I hadn't heard this in years and years and years, of third space,
Well,
correct?
I certainly can't take credit for coining the phrase, but I'm glad that I
For
shared the
me, you
phrase with
shared
you.
it with me,
Yes,
correct.
yes,
I
yes,
stand
yes.
corrected, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So essentially, if you bring it into the current vernacular, that's what you're doing, is you're creating a third space.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, the idea of a third space, or the concept, which I think is one that dates back to the 60s or 70s, it's really the idea that, the first place is the home, the second place is the workplace. And historically, there have been many, many, many third spaces, I should say, in society, whether it's, religious institutions or civic institutions, spaces like, what labor unions offered to their members. And what we've observed, especially in Western and increasingly secular societies, is really an erosion of these kinds of third
Absolutely.
spaces,
Yeah.
especially for younger people, and also a commercialization of these spaces. So I think, we still have libraries, we still have schools, we still have parks, we still have museums, but they are, either becoming fewer in number due to, reduced public investment, or they're no longer really appealing, or how can I say, actively engaging with contemporary society, perhaps in the way that they used to. And that's why it's exciting to see, libraries and museums starting to reinvent themselves, integrating more programming, integrating more digital technologies. And so I think in that vein, Therme really can be part of creating these third spaces. We are a ticketed attraction. We are a commercial operation. You do have to pay to get in the door, but you don't have to pay very much. I mean, the current pricing we're contemplating for the US market would start around $50 for a ticket. If you go in Europe, actually, the facilities are even cheaper than that. And, I would say the other thing that's really distinctive about Therme, and I think connects to this idea of a third place, is the intergenerational aspect. And, when you go inside our facilities, you will see everyone from age 5 to age 85. And if you go during the week in the mornings, it is heavily freighted towards seniors. We actually offer discounted pricing for seniors during the weekday mornings. If you go on the weekends, it's more weighted towards families. And then in the evenings, because we're open until midnight every night, it really is more millennials and young people. So there's kind of something for everyone under one roof. I think that in particular is something that has really eroded, in recent decades, and obviously digital technologies and platforms have only accelerated that.
Yeah. So what is the experience? Are these enclosed spaces? What is it that it looks like? What is it what is the experience like when you're inside?
Absolutely. Well, they are basically enormous glass enclosed domes the size of a football stadium or a concert arena. The smallest facility that we operate is 300,000 square feet. The largest is 700,000 square feet. You can think of these almost on the scale of an airport terminal. And the reason why they're so big is because we attract very, very, very large volumes of people. So on an average day, you could have, 4 to 5,000 people. On a peak day, we welcome 9 to 12,000 people. That's like, summer holiday kind of day. Part of the reason why they're so big is also because of that botanical environment that I mentioned earlier. There's over 1,000 fully grown mature trees in the facility, as well as thousands of plants. And so you need, high ceiling spans and a lot of natural light to make that environment healthy and sustained. And so when you're inside, you actually often don't even really realize you're in a building because when you look up, you see a tree canopy. You don't see, some kind of big roof. And actually, over our main pools, the roofs can open and close so that actually in the summer you get a natural breeze and you really do feel like you're outside and you're kind of blurring the boundary between built and natural. But you asked about the experience. So, I should certainly speak to that. Really, the experience is thermal relaxation and wellness, with water and heat. So you are bathing in pools of different temperatures. You're bathing in pools with different mineral compositions, calcium, lithium, salt. You are entering into saunas and steam rooms of different temperatures, different sizes, different levels of humidity. And the facilities are also very actively programmed. So you actually have something called aufguss, which is a German tradition of sauna entertainment, where you have a sauna master coming in and giving some aromatherapy demonstration with music, with sound, with light. It makes it incredibly entertaining and engaging. And it also moves the heat and the aroma and the humidity around the space, which makes it a much more immersive experience. And I think especially in the US, where people aren't maybe as accustomed to sauna culture, this kind of programming and entertainment is going to make the experience much, much, much more exciting and I think accessible for people. But the other thing I should say, and this is why we attract, so many thousands of people on busy days, is there's, probably 40% of the project is devoted to families. And in that area, you do have elements that you see from water parks. We have slides, we have wave pools, we have those kinds of attraction elements that you might see, in a family water park, but it's packaged in that botanical environment. And more importantly, it's supplemented by wellness experiences for the entire family to provide a counterpoint to the adrenaline. So you have steam rooms for kids, you have thermal pools for kids. And the idea is not only can the parents then relax, because parents might not want to be going down the water slide all day long, but actually there's a space for the kids to also down-regulate, to also relax, because children these days actually probably need those kinds of, down-regulating environments even more urgently than adults today.
Unquestionably. So how do you manage all of that? Who is watching the kids? Who's organizing people going in or just walking around and availing themselves of the beauty of this environment? It sounds like a
Well,
Herculean task.
it really is a choose your own adventure experience. It is not like a theme park where you have to go in and stand in line for a ride. And, I recently went to Disney World, and now because these parks are so popular, you basically have to, if you actually want to visit some of the attractions, you have to pre-book all of your attractions, almost like a schedule of a workday. At 10 a.m. I'm going to go here, and 3 p.m. I'm going to go there. And it's no longer that fun. It becomes kind of stressful. In Therme, it really is a choose your own adventure kind of experience. You go in and you could go visit the saunas, you could go visit the pools, you could go visit the slides, except on a very, 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 very busy peak day, you're never going to have any issue getting into any of those experiences. Maybe on a busy day, some of the saunas might be a little crowded, but you can almost always find yourself, a comfortable space. And in terms of the family area, because of the fact that there are these adult experiences that are delivered directly adjacent to the kids' experiences, the kids are always being supervised and the parents are never very far from the kids. And so we ensure that there's experiences appealing to parents and kind of guardians so that the kids aren't just running off and kind of disappearing. And we have lifeguards and we have people to ensure that people don't get injured. But by and large, this is not a facilitated experience with a minder. This is an independent experience where you are choosing what you want to do. And that's part of the wellness as well. You go in and you're not sure what you want to do, and you can kind of imagine your own adventure every time you go. And, interestingly, some Wellness environments are highly prescriptive and highly programmed and highly scheduled. And we believe that that is actually something that undermines that sense of relaxation. And so we take very much the opposite tack, which is to say, once you walk in the door, this place is your oyster, do whatever you wish. And there's no upcharge. Once you've paid the ticket to enter a certain area, all the experiences are complimentary. You don't have to worry about, oh, can I go in there, or oh, can I go in here?
And how are you finding locations? I mean, did you say it was 500 to 700,000 square feet?
Yeah.
And I know that you're anticipating putting one in Georgetown in Washington. Is that correct?
Well, it's not in Georgetown. It's along the Anacostia River in Southeast DC. That is the site that we're currently in discussions with the Washington, DC government about. But that actually is a good example of the kind of sites that we look for. We are looking for iconic sites in the heart of a city. And so at minimum, we need about 15 acres to make the concept work, because in addition to the building itself, we also have quite a lot of outdoor area around, with outdoor pools and outdoor restaurants and outdoor relaxation gardens and outdoor saunas and so on. So really the minimum amount of land that we need to make this concept work is about 15 acres. And then it can scale up to 25 or 30 acres, depending on how much land, is available. But in terms of the target type of location that we're looking for, we are looking for sites that are easily accessible, because we need to serve a very large number of people. So ideally, it's adjacent to mass transit and adjacent to, freeways. But we also want sites that have some sense of place and some sense of proximity to nature, because we don't just want to be an inward-looking kind of nature experience. We also want to be an outward-looking nature experience. And so in DC, the site that the District of Columbia has designated us for is along the Anacostia River. It's on a piece of land that has been closed off to the public for decades. Actually, it's fenced off and inaccessible. It's actually, interestingly, a site where the federal government used to have its tree nursery for many decades. Ironically, the pesticides they used for the tree nursery were toxic. So actually, the site is now closed and inaccessible. And so we would be part of a larger effort to revitalize and actually clean up that site from a contamination perspective and reopen it to the public.
So it's a brownfield.
It's a brownfield, exactly. But part of the reason that that site is so attractive to us is, it's adjacent to a river. You have an incredible view of the Capitol.
Oh,
It's directly adjacent to a metro station, and it's directly adjacent to multiple freeways. So it kind of hits a lot of those points that we look for. And I would say, the other way to spin it is maybe think about where, 15 or 20 years ago, you might have put a multiplex cinema or a shopping mall or some kind of, maybe a stadium. We look for those kinds of sites where you want to put places of assembly for very large numbers of people and appealing to, the majority of the population of a metro area. And the easy thing for us would be to put them on, in the suburbs somewhere really far away, but that's not of interest to us. We want to be part of the life of the city. We want to be part of the cultural life of the city. And so the site that we have recently acquired in Dallas also hits many of those criteria. It's adjacent to the historic Trinity River. It has a view of downtown. It's not too far from a light rail line, and it's directly adjacent to freeways. So it really is about hitting a lot of those points. And maybe the last thing I would say is, if you think about ancient Rome and where the Roman baths were placed, they were placed in the heart of an urban area, not on the edge, but in the very heart. And that really is, the inspiration for us in terms of carrying on that tradition.
yeah. And you've certainly got seasoned people, because one of your partners is Robert Hanneman, who is responsible for the creation and the execution of the High Line. So these are people who know what they're looking for and know what they're talking about. So yeah.
Exactly. And our chairman in the US is also someone who for decades and decades has been building public parks across the US. He led the development of Brooklyn Bridge Park. He was also heavily involved in the High Line. It's a gentleman called John Alschuler. So it's interesting that our leadership team actually includes a lot of people who come out of public space and urban planning. That's certainly my background too. And I think that speaks to our hope and very much our intent for these projects to be civic projects. Yes, they may be commercial. Yes, they may be developed by a private for-profit entity, but the goal is for these to be heavily integrated in their communities, We will be partnering with community organizations. We'll offer discounted pricing. We'll even offer at times free pricing, because for us, the projects are only successful if they're achieving social impact and, enhancing the communities that they're in.
And are you getting pushback? I mean, I know that you're going to the Middle East. I know that you're going to Asia. I know that you're in Europe, and now you're in the United States. Are you getting pushback from the municipalities and from the states about this, who don't understand what it is that you're trying to do? Or are they behind it because they understand the potential?
Well, it's a great question. I would say, our government partners have been incredibly, incredibly excited about the potential impact of Therme. What they see is something that is increasingly hard to do, which is deliver projects in cities that bring together large volumes of people in physical space. If you think about it 10, 15 years ago, people went to the movies, people went shopping in the mall, people went to offices. But increasingly, and obviously our conversation today is a good example of this, you can access those kinds of experiences digitally. And a lot of the uses that used to reliably bring people together in cities and for city governments, generate tax revenue, generate spending, generate foot traffic, aren't as effective as they were in the past. And what's fantastic about Therme is it's a use and an experience that cannot be digitized. You can't do this at home, you can't do this on an app, and you never will be able to, unless some technology I can't even imagine is created. But that's something that city governments have been incredibly excited about. And the fact that we can connect into and enhance adjacent public space, such as parks, because we're such a nature-focused use, is also something that has been incredibly interesting to them. A stadium or a office building, or certainly a residential development, is not a friendly neighbor to a public space. It's a closed wall, it's a barrier, it's not very active on a ground floor necessarily, while a therme is all about nature, all about greenery, and all about porosity with its edges. And so that actually creates a very appealing kind of, adjacency for a public space, kind of like putting a botanical garden into a park, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Um, I would say the one area where sometimes we do get questions is, oh, this is such a European concept. Will it work here? Oh, this is such an Asian concept. Will it work here? But I would certainly say in the last 3 years, that we've been working on this, we've heard those questions less and less. There has really been a movement and a resurgence of thermal bathing and social bathing and so on in the US over the past 2 or 3 years. There are companies like Othership and World Springs and Bathhouse, which are doing very, very, very well. And it kind of blazing the trail for us. Yes, we're larger, but we also incorporate elements of things that Americans love and have loved for decades, whether it's theme parks, water parks, we have swim up bars, we have water slides. So the thermal bathing experience is packaged in a kind of immersive, experiential way that I think is going to be very exciting and very accessible and fun for people.
And it's so healing for the older generation, but it's so delicious for the younger generation, for these kids who are growing up in an urban wasteland, to be exposed to this utopian, delicious, exquisite something that you just plop down and land in the middle of urban decay.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just the physical experience, because by now, and there's, new studies coming out every week about the health benefits
Yeah.
of heat and balneotherapy and what it does for, cardiac health and for joint health. But I would say even more impactful than that, it's the social impact of being around other people, being around other people in a very safe and open kind of environment. When you walk into a therme, everyone's in a bathing suit. You don't know who's rich, who's poor. All of those markers that segregate us in society outside fall away. And if you visit, some of the facilities that we already have in the US, for instance, Korean spas or Russian bathhouses, you'll see an incredibly diverse array of people, race, ethnicity, age, gender, people there alone, people there in groups. So already these kinds of experiences are attracting a very broad spectrum of society, and we're confident that we'll only, enhance and increase that.
So what is your timeline for the U.S.?
It's a great question. So just building one of these projects takes, 2 to 3 years. It's like building a large stadium or a large theme park. So we are currently in the design phase in Dallas and in the approvals phase. Our hope is that, in early 2027, late 2026, we would break ground and we'd be opening sometime in 2029 or 2030. So there's still, 4 or 5 years to go until we have our doors open. But we're not in a rush. These are large projects. It takes time to get things right. It takes time to speak to all the different stakeholders and members of the community to ensure that they are supportive of the project and are able to share their perspective on a project. So nothing big should be done quickly. And from my point of view, that's what is exciting about building large projects, is being able to have the time to ensure that you're able to incorporate, all of the feedback, meet with all the people who will be able to, hopefully enjoy the project in the future. So, we are aggressive in our timeline, but we're also realistic. But, we recently announced a joint venture with a real estate company called the Georgetown Company. It's a national real estate company. And working with them, we, have set a goal of building 10 of these facilities over the next decade. And so the idea is Dallas and DC will be kind of the pilot projects, but ultimately we believe that every large metropolitan area in the US can support a Therme, especially because they predominantly attract residents, right? This isn't a tourist-driven concept. So if you have one in Chicago and you have one in LA, they're not going to cannibalize each other. So ultimately that's the vision, and ultimately that's the vision of Therme Group globally, is, to deliver a Therme in all major global cities, because this is an amenity that we believe is integral to the health and well-being of an urban area and of an urban society.
Absolutely. And how are these facilities funded?
How are they
Are they
funded?
are they privately funded, or is it a partnership with the?
So they have been privately funded to date. I mean, the facilities are highly profitable and exhibit all of the business fundamentals that would attract, private capital and third-party capital. The facility in Erding is the largest water park in Europe in terms of visitors. So we get almost 2 million visitors a year there. And, what makes the business model so attractive is it's this combination of high volume, long dwell time, high repeat visit, and an intergenerational customer base. So people often ask us, who's your target market? And it's very, very hard to answer that question because we cater to both adults and to children. We cater to both weekend, customers and weekday customers. We cater to both health and wellness oriented type customers, as well as people looking for a good time who want to drink a cocktail. So it's a very, very broad spectrum. And sometimes those are the same people, but coming for different kinds of motivations. Maybe sometime I'm going in the week because I want to have a quiet time by myself or with my partner. Maybe on the weekend I'm coming back because I want to be with my, my friends and go with a large group and have a cocktail under a palm tree. So, you can kind of rinse and repeat and have a completely different experience every time you go. But our goal is to raise, significant third-party capital to deliver the pipeline. Just in the past couple of months, we've announced deals with Macquarie, which is an Australian infrastructure fund, one of the largest in the world, as well as Sculptor, which is a global private equity outfit that has seen, the huge potential in our business model. And I think in this idea of wellness as a category that is not only growing rapidly today, but long-term will continue to grow. So we're confident that we'll be able to secure the funds, to deliver on this vision. And, we shouldn't beat about the bush. These are very, very large, very, very expensive projects.
Absolutely.
Each one costs, 400, 500 million USD to execute. But then you're attracting 2+ million people a year, so it pays itself back very solidly.
And are the municipalities or the states providing any value to you? Are they giving you any kind of, any kind of benefits because you're stimulating the environment, you're stimulating?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, on a case-by-case basis, depending on the project needs and the project context, that's something we would certainly enter into a dialogue with a local government about. If we are helping to revitalize, a certain area or invest in a public space around the project, that might be an area for public-private partnership. Or, for instance, in Washington, D.C., where we are helping to basically unlock a piece of land that has been inaccessible and contaminated for decades, that would be an area in which we would hope for some public, investment to help unlock the project. That wouldn't be an investment into the business, but it would be an investment into the supporting infrastructure, the roads, the utilities, that create a development pad that we can then build on. But the business, as of itself, is very viable. So it's not like we're looking for an operating subsidy. But if the piece of land itself is not yet ready for development, and often, when you have large pieces of land in cities that haven't been developed, it's because of a lack of infrastructure. And that's where a partnership with the local government really becomes critical.
And tax breaks. You should be afforded tax breaks, don't you think?
Well, I think on a
Because you're
case-by-case
stimulating the
basis,
economy. Yeah.
depending on the impacts that we bring, it's something that we would explore. But a priori, it's not something that we go into and say, we will only consider projects with tax breaks.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fantastic, and I can't wait to see this. I can't wait to see this evolve in the United States of America.
Well, we hope we can welcome you in one of our European projects sooner rather than later. Yeah, we believe that there's a very bright future for these kinds of wellness experiences at scale. It's something that this country and this society, I think, desperately needs today more than ever. And it's interesting, if you look back historically, America once had a thriving, bathing and social wellness culture.
Is that right?
It's things like suburbanization, the rise of the private pool, the rise of the shower, funnily enough, that really started to undermine some of these communal experiences. But I think what you've seen in the past, especially 5 years, is really a return of interest to these kinds of communal experiences, because people are realizing, a life that's lived without others is a pretty empty and a pretty sad life. So we hope to be a space that can address, the loneliness epidemic, address also, the issues of lack of contact with nature, and be a place that people will come back to and people will make special memories in with family and friends for many years to come.
Fantastic. And is your facility, I'm going to be in Glasgow next week. Is your facility in Glasgow up and running yet? No.
No, that's still in the development stage as well. But from the UK, you can take a
Super.
very quick flight to either Germany or Romania and visit one of our
Oh,
projects
really?
there.
Okay.
So, and it's funny, currently, I think 40% of the customers to our Romanian facility are international tourists. It's actually the biggest tourist attraction in Eastern Europe.
Huh.
And a lot of that is because of the cheap flights that you have from the UK and Italy and France and Spain, to get into Eastern Europe. So we went viral on TikTok actually last year because people were saying you can go to Romania and back for, and spend a whole day in a spa there for less than the cost of just going to a spa in London.
Oh my God.
So that was a hard thing to say no to, I think.
Scale. Well, thank you very, 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 very much. I am honored and delighted to have you on Soft and Savage, and I look forward to your making the United States and the world a better place.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to hearing, all your episodes and guests to come. It sounds like you got an amazing roster of people and a great concept for the
I,
podcast.
I
And
hope so.
hope to see you again in person soon.
Okay, I hope so. Thank you.